Captain Rachel Hawk Morgan had flown 73 combat missions over Afghanistan before the one that changed everything. She was 32 years old, the daughter of a mechanic from small-town Nebraska, and one of only a handful of female A-10 Thunderbolt pilots in the United States Air Force. The A-10 wasn't a glamorous aircraft. It was built around a massive gun designed to fly low and slow to take punishment and keep flying. Other pilots called it the Warthog. Rachel called it honest. It didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. On the morning of September 14th, Rachel sat in the briefing room at Bagram Airfield, surrounded by men who barely looked at her. She'd grown used to that over the years. The sideways glances, the whispered doubts, the jokes that stopped when she entered a room. "Morgan, you'll be providing close air support for a SEAL team operating near the Pakistan border," Major Phillips said, not quite meeting her eyes. "They're extracting a high-value target. Your call sign for today is Hawkeye 1. Lieutenant Commander Jake Reeves, the SEAL team leader, stood at the back of the room. He was tall, square-jawed, and had the kind of confidence that came from being told you're exceptional since birth. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "With all due respect, Major," Reeves said, "my team is going into heavy Taliban territory. We need a pilot with experience in hot zones." "Captain Morgan has 73 combat missions," Phillips replied. "How many under direct fire?" Reeves asked, looking directly at Rachel for the first time. Rachel held his gaze. 41. "How many resulted in enemy kills?" "I don't keep score, Commander. I keep my people alive." Reeves smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's real inspiring, Captain, but we need someone who can make the hard calls when things go sideways. No offense, but this isn't a training exercise." "None taken," Rachel said, standing up. "And for the record, Commander, I've never lost a ground team. Can you say the same?" The room went silent. Major Phillips cleared his throat. "That's enough. Morgan, you have your assignment. Wheels up in 30 minutes. As the room emptied, Rachel gathered her flight gear. She'd heard it all before. Women were too emotional for combat, too weak, too distracted. It didn't matter that she'd graduated top of her flight class. It didn't matter that her accuracy scores were among the best in the squadron. To men like Reeves, she would always be a liability. Rachel walked across the tarmac to where her A-10 waited. The ground crew had painted a small red hawk on the nose, her personal insignia. She ran her hand along the scarred metal of the fuselage. The aircraft had taken small arms fire on its last mission, leaving a constellation of small dents along the left wing. "She's ready for you, Captain," Sergeant Martinez said. He was older, maybe 50, with kind eyes and grease permanently embedded in his fingernails. "Fresh ammo load, full fuel. I checked everything twice." "You always do, Martinez. Thank you." "You be careful up there," he said quietly. "I heard what that SEAL said in the briefing. Don't let him get in your head." Rachel smiled. "My head's just fine, Sergeant." She climbed into the cockpit and began her pre-flight checks. The familiar routine calmed her. Master arm switch, throttle, flight controls. Each movement was practiced precise. Up here, she wasn't a woman or a man. She was a pilot, and her aircraft didn't care about gender. The twin turbofan engines roared to life. Rachel taxied to the runway, received clearance, and pushed the throttles forward. The accelerated down the runway, heavy with weapons and fuel, then lifted into the bright Afghan sky. Below her, the mountains stretched out in shades of brown and gray. She climbed to 12,000 feet and set course for the target area, 200 miles to the east. The flight would take 40 minutes. "Hawkeye 1, this is Paladin 6, Reeves' voice crackled over the radio. "We are 15 minutes from objective. Enemy presence unknown. Stay high until we call you in." "Copy that, Paladin 6. Hawkeye 1 standing by." Rachel circled above the designated area, watching the terrain below through her targeting pod. The village was small, maybe 40 buildings clustered around a dry riverbed. Her instruments showed no heat signatures, no movement. It looked abandoned. "Hawkeye 1, Paladin 6. We are moving to objective. Stay alert." "Roger, Paladin." 10 minutes passed, then 20. Rachel maintained her orbit, eyes constantly scanning both her instruments and the ground below. Something felt wrong. The village was too quiet. In her experience, Taliban fighters didn't abandon positions without reason. Then the radio exploded with sound. "Contact, contact. We're taking fire from all sides. Hawkeye 1, we need close air support now." Rachel's training took over. She pushed the stick forward, diving toward the village. Through her canopy, she could see muzzle flashes from multiple buildings. Tracer rounds arced up from the ground. Paladin 6, Hawk A-1 inbound. Mark your position. We're pinned down in the north compound. Smoke out. Purple smoke began billowing from a building on the northern edge of the village. Rachel lined up her attack run, fingers hovering over the weapon release. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon, the massive gun the A-10 was built around, carried 1,100 rounds of 30mm ammunition. Each round could punch through armor. Paladin 6, confirm all friendly forces are north of the smoke. Confirmed, light them up. Rachel pressed the trigger. The aircraft shuddered as the gun came to life, firing at a rate of 65 rounds per second. The sound was like ripping canvas, loud even through her helmet. Below, the buildings south of the smoke erupted in clouds of dust and debris. She pulled up hard, feeling the G-forces push her into her seat, and circled for another pass. More muzzle flashes. More tracer fire reaching up toward her. Good hits, good hits. We need another pass on the eastern buildings. Rachel lined up again. This time she launched 2 Maverick missiles, watching them streak toward their targets. The explosions bloomed orange and black against the brown landscape. Paladin 6, how copy? Static. Paladin 6, respond. More static then. Heavy casualties, need immediate extraction. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest. Say again, Paladin 6, you're breaking up. Medical emergency. Rodriguez is down, we need. The radio cut to static again. Rachel tried every frequency. Nothing. She looked at her fuel gauge. She had maybe 40 minutes of loiter time left, then she'd have to return to base or find a tanker. Below, the firefight continued. She could see figures moving between buildings. The SEALs were still fighting, but they were surrounded. And without radio contact, she couldn't coordinate attacks without risking hitting friendly forces. Rachel made a decision. She would stay until her fuel forced her to leave. She would protect that team, even if their commander didn't think she belonged there. For the next 30 minutes, she flew a pattern above the village, making attack runs whenever she could clearly identify enemy positions away from the SEALs. Her ammunition ran low. Her fuel gauge crept toward the red line. Finally, Reeves' voice came back on the radio, strained and weak. Hawk A-1, we're pulling back to secondary LZ, 3 wounded, thanks for the cover. Copy Paladin 6, stay safe down there. Rachel turned her A-10 toward Bagram, the fuel warning light now glowing steady red. She'd pushed it close, too close, but the SEALs were alive. As she flew west, smoke began trailing from her left engine. She must have taken a hit without realizing it. The engine temperature gauge climbed. Warning lights flashed across her instrument panel. Rachel radioed Bagram. Tower Hawk A-1 declaring emergency, left engine on fire 15 minutes out. Copy Hawk A-1, emergency crews standing by. The fire spread. Rachel could see flames in her mirror now, orange tongues licking at the wing. The A-10 could fly on one engine, but the fire was eating through control systems. Her hydraulic pressure was dropping. She nursed the aircraft toward the airfield, hands steady on the stick despite the fear clawing at her chest. The runway appeared ahead, almost there. The left wing exploded. Rachel woke up to white ceiling tiles and the smell of disinfectant. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then the pain hit, a deep, burning ache that radiated from her ribs and left shoulder. She tried to sit up and gasped. Easy, Captain, don't try to move yet. A nurse appeared beside the bed, young and concerned. You're at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, Germany. You've been unconscious for 3 days. My plane, Rachel's voice came out as a croak. Gone, I'm afraid, but you ejected. The rescue team found you 12 miles from Bagram. You're very lucky. Lucky, Rachel closed her eyes and tried to remember. The explosion, the sudden lurch as the A-10 broke apart, her hand slamming the ejection handle, the rocket motor firing, the brutal acceleration, the parachute opening with a jerk that nearly knocked her unconscious. Then nothing. The SEAL team, Rachel said, did they make it out? The nurse's expression shifted, became carefully neutral. I'm not authorized to discuss mission details, but Major Phillips is here. He's been waiting to speak with you. Major Phillips entered 20 minutes later. He looked older than Rachel remembered, with new lines around his eyes and mouth. He pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down heavily. How are you feeling, Captain? Like I got hit by a truck, sir, the SEAL team. Lost 3 men, Phillips said quietly. Rodriguez, Chen, and Kowalski, 2 more critically wounded. Commander Reeves is filing a report. Rachel felt the words like a physical blow. 3 dead. She'd been overhead, she'd provided cover. How had it gone so wrong? The mission was compromised from the start, Phillips continued. Intelligence failure. The Taliban knew they were coming. It was an ambush. Then why? Commander Reeves is claiming you weren't responsive to his radio calls, that you failed to provide adequate close air support during the critical phase of the engagement. Phillips looked at her steadily. He's recommending a formal investigation into your conduct. Rachel stared at him. That's insane. I flew cover for 40 minutes. I expended all my ammunition protecting them. I nearly died getting them out. I know your flight recorder data backs you up, but Reeves is a decorated SEAL commander with friends in high places. And you, Phillips sighed. You're a female pilot who lost her aircraft. The optics aren't great, Rachel. Optics? Rachel felt anger cutting through the pain medication fog. 3 men are dead and we're worried about optics. That's not what I meant, but this is the military. Perception matters. There are already people saying you weren't ready for the mission, that you panicked under fire. That's a lie. I know it is, but Reeves is telling a different story, and his surviving team members are backing him up. Rachel closed her eyes. Of course they were. SEAL teams were brothers. They protected each other. The truth didn't matter as much as loyalty. What happens now? She asked. You recover, then there'll be an investigation. You'll give your statement. The board will review the evidence and make a determination. Phillips stood up. Get some rest, Captain. You're going to need it. Over the next 2 weeks, as Rachel healed, the story took on a life of its own. Someone leaked details to the press. The headlines were brutal. Female pilot error may have cost SEAL lives. Was diversity pushed to blame for combat deaths? Captain called dangerous by elite forces. Rachel's mother called from Nebraska, her voice tight with worry. Honey, what's happening? The news is saying terrible things. It's politics, Mom. Don't believe everything you hear. But that commander, the handsome one, he was on the news saying, Mom, I can't talk about it, not yet. But I did my job, I did everything right. Her mother was quiet for a moment. I believe you, sweetheart. Your father would have believed you too. Rachel's father had died when she was 16, his heart giving out while he worked on an engine in their garage. He'd been the one who taught her to fly, taking her up in a borrowed Cessna when she was 12. He'd never doubted she could do anything she set her mind to. She wished he was alive now. The investigation began in late October. Rachel was flown back to the United States, to a conference room at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. The board consisted of 3 colonels, all men, all with fighter pilot backgrounds. They sat behind a long table and regarded her with expressions that ranged from skepticism to outright hostility. Commander Jake Reeves testified first. He was in his dress uniform, ribbons covering his chest, looking every inch the war hero. He spoke with quiet authority, describing the mission, the ambush, and Rachel's alleged failures. Captain Morgan was slow to respond to our initial contact report, he said. When she did engage, her fire was inaccurate and endangered my team. We had to abort our primary objective because we couldn't count on adequate air support. Commander, one of the colonels said, the flight recorder shows Captain Morgan engaged within 90 seconds of your contact report and delivered multiple accurate strikes. Reeves shook his head. With respect, sir, I was on the ground. The recorder doesn't capture everything. There were several minutes where we received no support at all, minutes when my men were dying. Were you in communication with Captain Morgan during this time? Negative. Our radio malfunctioned. But a pilot of her experience should have recognized we were in trouble and acted accordingly. Rachel listened, her hands clenched in her lap. He was lying, or at least bending the truth beyond recognition. But he did it so smoothly, with such conviction, that even she almost believed him. Other SEAL team members testified. They told similar stories, though none had actually seen what Rachel was doing overhead. They just knew their friends had died, and someone needed to be held accountable. When it was Rachel's turn, she stood before the board and told her story exactly as it had happened. She described every radio call, every attack run, every decision. She kept her voice steady and professional, though inside she was screaming. Captain Morgan, one of the colonels said when she finished. Why do you think Commander Reeves' account differs so dramatically from yours? Rachel met his eyes. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted. Commander Reeves didn't want me on that mission. He made that clear before we even launched. When things went wrong, and they went wrong because of bad intelligence, not pilot error, he needed someone to blame. I'm a convenient target. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. The hearing concluded without a verdict. Rachel was placed on administrative leave pending the board's decision. She flew home to Nebraska, to the small town of Henderson where she'd grown up, and moved back into her childhood home. Her mother fussed over her, cooking enormous meals and trying not to watch the news. Her friends from high school didn't know what to say. Some believed her, some clearly didn't. The town split into camps, arguing in coffee shops and on social media about whether Rachel Morgan was a hero or a scapegoat. Rachel spent her days running on country roads, trying to exhaust herself enough to sleep. At night, she dreamed of the explosion, of 3 men she'd never met dying in an Afghan village while she circled uselessly overhead. The verdict came in November, delivered by certified mail. The board found insufficient evidence to support negligence charges, but recommended Rachel be reassigned to a training role stateside. In military terms, it was a gentle firing. She could keep her rank and her career, but she'd never fly combat missions again. Rachel read the letter 3 times, then walked out to the garage where her father's tools still hung on the walls. She sat on the cold concrete floor and finally let herself cry. She had done everything right, everything, and it hadn't mattered. Commander Jake Reeves appeared on 60 Minutes 2 weeks later, giving a somber interview about the men his team had lost and the lessons learned. He never mentioned Rachel by name, but everyone knew who he was talking about when he said, "Sometimes political correctness costs lives." Rachel watched the interview alone in her mother's living room. When it ended, she turned off the television and sat in the dark. She was finished with the military, finished with trying to prove herself to men who would never accept her. She would resign her commission, find a job somewhere quiet, and try to forget. But 3 days later, her phone rang. The number was blocked. "Captain Morgan?" The voice was male, older, with a Texas accent. "Who is this?" "My name is William Chen. My son David was one of the SEALs killed in that village." Rachel's breath caught. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize. I called because I need to ask you something. Did you do everything you could to save my son?" Rachel closed her eyes. "Yes, sir, I did." "That's what I thought, because David called me the night before that mission. He told me about you, said there was a female A-10 pilot providing cover, and the SEAL commander was giving her hell about it. David said he didn't care who was flying as long as they were good. He said you had a reputation for being the best." Tears burned in Rachel's eyes. "Your son was a good man, Mr. Chen." "He was, and he deserves the truth about how he died. So do Rodriguez and Kowalski. I don't believe Commander Reeves is telling that truth." "Neither do I, sir, but I can't prove it." "Maybe not yet," Chen said. "But I'm a lawyer, Captain. I know how to dig, and I'm not going to stop until I find out what really happened in that village. Will you help me?" Rachel looked out the window at the Nebraska prairie stretching to the horizon. She thought about her father, about the 3 dead SEALs, about every person who had ever told her she didn't belong. "Yes," she said, "I'll help you." Part 3, The Investigation. William Chen arrived in Henderson on a gray December morning, driving a rental car from the Omaha airport. He was in his 60s, thin and intense, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Rachel met him at her mother's house, and they sat at the kitchen table with documents spread between them. "I've spent the last month talking to everyone I could find who was involved in that operation," Chen said. "There are inconsistencies everywhere in the official story." Rachel leaned forward. "What kind of inconsistencies?" Chen pulled out a folder. "Let's start with the intelligence. The mission was supposed to capture or kill a high-value Taliban commander named Khalid Mansour. According to the briefing documents, Mansour was confirmed to be in that village based on signals intelligence and a local informant." "That's what we were told. But I found the analyst who processed that intelligence. She's a young lieutenant at the NSA, scared to death but willing to talk off the record. She says the signal's intelligence was ambiguous at best. There was cell phone activity in the area, but nothing that definitively placed Manser there. She recommended against the mission. Rachel felt a chill. Who overrode her? That's where it gets interesting. The order came from a Colonel Marcus Wade at Special Operations Command. He personally authorized the mission and insisted it proceed immediately, despite the analyst's concerns. Why would he do that? Chen's expression was grim. That's what we need to find out, but here's another piece. The local informant who supposedly confirmed Manser's location. He disappeared 3 days after your mission. No one has seen him since. Rachel stood up and walked to the window. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, dusting the fields white. You think the mission was compromised before it even started? I think someone wanted that SEAL team in that village, and they didn't care much about the intelligence supporting it. But why? What would be the point? Chen was quiet for a moment. I don't know yet, but Commander Reeves requested that specific mission. He volunteered his team for it. Rachel turned back to face him. How do you know that? I have a friend at SOCOM. He pulled the mission request logs. Reeves had been pushing for a high-profile operation for months. This was supposed to be his ticket to a promotion. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture Rachel didn't want to see. So Reeves wanted glory. He got a rushed mission based on questionable intelligence, and when it went wrong, he needed someone to blame. That's my working theory, but there's more. Chen pulled out another document. I got hold of the preliminary casualty report. Your 3 missiles and gun runs killed 47 Taliban fighters. That's a significant enemy force, much larger than the intelligence predicted. Rachel remembered the muzzle flashes, the tracer fire, the chaos. It was an ambush. They knew we were coming. Which brings us back to the informant. What if he wasn't giving us intelligence? What if he was giving the Taliban intelligence about us? Then whoever authorized this mission sent those men into a trap. Rachel felt sick. And I nearly died covering their retreat. Chen nodded slowly. I think Commander Reeves knows more than he's saying. I think he knows the mission was compromised, but admitting that would end his career. Better to blame you. Can you prove any of this? Not yet, but I'm working on it. There's one more thing. Chen hesitated. I hired a private investigator to look into Reeves' background. He's clean on paper, but my guy found something interesting. Reeves has been having financial problems, significant gambling debts, about $300,000 worth. Rachel sat back down. You think someone paid him? I think it's possible, or I think someone had leverage over him and used it. Either way, I believe Reeves had reasons beyond professional ambition for volunteering for that mission. They worked through the afternoon, building a timeline, identifying witnesses, mapping connections. Rachel's mother brought them sandwiches and coffee, quietly supportive without asking questions she knew couldn't be answered. By evening, they had the outline of a case. Not proof, not yet, but enough threads to pull on. What do we do now? Rachel asked. We need to find the informant. If he's still alive, he might talk. And we need someone inside SOCOM who can access the classified files. The full intelligence package, the mission planning documents, everything. That's asking someone to risk their career. Yes, Chen agreed. But my son is dead. Rodriguez and Kowalski are dead. If there was criminal negligence or something worse, those responsible need to face justice. Will you help me find someone? Rachel thought about the people she'd served with. Most would never buck the system, never go against a SEAL commander. But there were a few, the ones who valued truth over loyalty, who might be willing to help. I know someone, she said. Sergeant Martinez. He was my crew chief at Bagram. If anyone has contacts in the intelligence community, it's him. She called Martinez that night. He listened to everything, asked a few sharp questions, then said he'd make some calls. 2 days later, Rachel's phone rang again. Captain Morgan, this is Lieutenant Sarah Park, NSA. Sergeant Martinez said you wanted to talk to me about the Manser operation. Rachel's heart raced. Lieutenant, I don't want to get you in trouble. I'm already in trouble, ma'am. I've been carrying this around for months. The intelligence for that mission was garbage. I said so in my report. I was told to shut up and color. When I heard 3 men died, Park's voice shook. I can't be part of a cover-up. Tell me what you need. Over the next 3 weeks, Park provided documents. Chen flew to Afghanistan to search for the informant. Rachel worked her contacts, slowly building a network of people willing to talk off the record. The picture that emerged was damning. Colonel Wade had pushed the mission through over multiple objections. He'd assured Reeves that the intelligence was solid, and he'd personally edited the post-mission report to minimize questions about the mission planning. But the why remained elusive. Why would a colonel at SOCOM deliberately authorize a compromised mission? The answer came from an unexpected source. Chen called Rachel at 2 in the morning, his voice crackling over a bad connection from Kabul. "I found him, the informant. His name is Farid Ahmadi, and he's hiding in a refugee camp outside Jalalabad." "Is he willing to talk?" "Oh, he's willing. Rachel, he says Colonel Wade paid him to give bad information. $50,000 to confirm Mansour was in that village, knowing he wasn't. Wade wanted the SEALs to walk into an ambush." Rachel felt the room spin. "That's treason." "That's murder, and Ahmadi has proof. Bank records, messages, everything. Wade was working for a defense contractor that was about to lose a major contract. They needed a high-profile failure in Afghanistan to justify continued funding. So Wade sacrificed a SEAL team for money. And Reeves went along with it, either because Wade had leverage over his gambling debts or because Reeves didn't ask enough questions. Either way, he knew the mission was wrong. When it went sideways, he blamed you to cover his own complicity. Rachel stood up, packing her small bedroom. "Chen, if we release this, it's going to destroy careers. It's going to be a scandal that rocks the entire military. My son is dead because of these men. I don't care about their careers." "Neither do I. What do we need to do?" "Get somewhere safe. Wade has friends, and if he finds out we know, he'll move to protect himself. Can you disappear for a few days?" Rachel thought about her mother, about the small town where everyone knew her. "Yes, I have a place." She packed a bag, left a note for her mother, and drove through the night to South Dakota, to a cabin her father had built near the Black Hills. It was remote, off the grid, with no internet and spotty cell phone service. She spent 3 days there waiting. On the 4th day, Chen called. "It's done. I handed everything to the Inspector General and a reporter at the Washington Post. They're running the story tomorrow. Wade's been arrested. Reeves is being recalled for questioning." Rachel closed her eyes. "Is it enough?" "It's enough to start. The rest will come out in the investigation. You're going to be cleared, Rachel, officially and publicly." She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt empty. 3 men were still dead, their families still grieved. Justice didn't bring them back. "Thank you," she said, "for believing me. Thank you for saving the men you could. David's squad mate, Petty Officer Harris, told me you kept them alive for 40 minutes against impossible odds. He said you were the best pilot he'd ever worked with. I wanted you to know that." After Chen hung up, Rachel walked outside into the cold January air. The stars were brilliant above the hills, free of light pollution, spread across the sky like diamonds. She thought about her father, about the 3 SEALs, about all the people who had doubted her, and all the people who had believed. Tomorrow the world would know the truth, but tonight she just stood under the stars and breathed. The Washington Post story broke on a Tuesday morning and exploded across every news platform in America. The headline was simple and devastating. SOCOM colonel arrested for deliberately compromising SEAL mission that left 3 dead. Rachel watched from the cabin as her phone filled with messages. Reporters requesting interviews. Former colleagues offering apologies. Strangers on social media calling her a hero or demanding she be court-martialed anyway. The internet was doing what it always did, turning complex truth into simple narratives that fit predetermined biases. But this time, the evidence was overwhelming. The bank records Chen had obtained showed Colonel Marcus Wade receiving multiple payments from a defense contracting firm called Titan Strategic Solutions. The messages between Wade and the Afghan informant laid out the entire conspiracy. The contractor had been about to lose a $3 billion contract because violence in Afghanistan was decreasing. They needed a high-profile failure to justify continued military presence and funding. So Wade had manufactured one. The Pentagon's official response came that afternoon. Defense Secretary James Morrison held a press conference, his face grave. "The allegations against Colonel Wade represent a betrayal of everything the United States military stands for," he said. "If proven true, his actions cost the lives of 3 brave service members and nearly killed a 4th. A full investigation is underway." Colonel Wade has been relieved of his command and is currently in custody awaiting court-martial proceedings. A reporter shouted a question. What about Commander Reeves? Did he know the mission was compromised? Morrison's jaw tightened. Commander Reeves' role is under investigation. He has been recalled from deployment for questioning. Another reporter. And Captain Morgan, the pilot who was blamed for the mission failure. Captain Morgan performed her duties with exceptional skill and courage. The accusations against her were unfounded. The Air Force is reviewing her case and will take appropriate action. Rachel turned off the television. Appropriate action. Bureaucratic language for we were wrong, but we're not going to admit it too loudly. Her phone rang. Major Phillips. Captain Morgan, I owe you an apology. Yes, sir, you do. Phillips sighed. For what it's worth, I never believed Reeves' version, but I didn't fight hard enough for you. That's on me. A lot of people didn't fight, sir. They just let me burn. I know, and I'm sorry, but I'm calling because the Air Force wants to reinstate you to active flying status. Full honors, back pay for the time you were grounded. They're even talking about a medal. Rachel looked out the cabin window at the pine trees swaying in the wind. I don't want their medal. Rachel, I want 3 things, Major. I want a public apology. I want my record cleared completely, not just quietly. And I want to fly combat missions again, not training, not desk work, the real thing. Phillips was quiet for a moment. I'll see what I can do. That's not good enough. Either they give me what I'm asking, or I resign and spend the rest of my life giving interviews about how the Air Force throws female pilots under the bus to protect SEAL reputations. Is that a threat? That's a promise. I'm done being polite, sir. I'm done making it easy for people who tried to destroy me. Phillips laughed, surprising her. Good, it's about time you got angry. I'll make the calls. Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours turned into a media circus. William Chen appeared on every major news program, telling his son's story and praising Rachel's courage. Lieutenant Sarah Park went public with her concerns about the intelligence, corroborating everything. Even Petty Officer Harris, the SEAL who had survived the mission, gave an interview calling Rachel the only reason any of us made it home. The public turned. Suddenly, Rachel was a hero. The woman who had been maligned was now a symbol of military women everywhere who had been doubted and dismissed. Politicians called for investigations into gender bias in combat evaluations. Veterans groups demanded accountability. Rachel stayed in the cabin, away from it all. She went for long runs in the hills. She chopped wood for the stove. She tried not to think about what came next. On Thursday evening, Major Phillips called back. You got everything you asked for. The Air Force will issue a public apology tomorrow. Your record is being cleared and amended to reflect commendation for actions under fire. And you're being transferred to the 23rd Fighter Group at Moody Air Force Base. A-10 Squadron, combat-ready status. Rachel closed her eyes. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Thank William Chen and that NSA lieutenant. They're the ones who fought for you. I just made the phone calls. Phillips paused. There's one more thing. Commander Reeves has been relieved of his command. The investigation found that he knew the intelligence was questionable but proceeded anyway because he wanted the mission on his record. He's facing charges of negligence and filing false reports. What about the men who backed up his story? They were following their commander. The military culture of loyalty runs deep. They're not being charged, but their testimonies are being reevaluated in light of the new evidence. Rachel felt a grim satisfaction. Not justice, maybe, but accountability. It would have to be enough. She returned to Nebraska on Friday. Her mother cried when she walked through the door, holding her tight and not letting go for a long moment. I knew you were telling the truth, her mother said. I always knew. The town of Henderson threw a welcome home party that weekend. The VFW hall was packed with people Rachel had known her whole life. The mayor gave a speech. The high school band played. Old friends apologized for doubting her. Rachel stood at the front of the room and felt the weight of the last 4 months pressing down on her. 3 men were dead. Others had nearly destroyed her career and reputation. And now everyone wanted to celebrate like none of it had happened. Thank you all for coming, she said when it was her turn to speak. I appreciate the support more than I can say, but I want to be clear about something. I'm not a hero. I did my job, that's all. The real heroes are David Chen, Marcus Rodriguez, and Joseph Kowalski. They died because the system failed them, because people put career advancement and profit over truth and duty. The room was silent. So if you want to honor me, honor them. Remember their names. Demand that the people who lead our military are worthy of the men and women they command, and never let loyalty override truth. She stepped down from the podium to thunderous applause, but she knew the applause wasn't for her words. It was relief. Relief that the story had a happy ending, that the good guys won, that justice had been served. But Rachel knew better. Justice was messy and incomplete. The contractor executives who had paid Colonel Wade were facing civil charges but would probably never see prison. Wade himself would be court-martialed, but the process would take years. Reeves would lose his command but might keep his pension and rank. And 3 families would still spend every holiday missing someone they loved. That night, Rachel sat in her father's garage with a beer and her mother's photo albums. She looked at pictures of herself as a child, grinning in the cockpit of that old Cessna. So confident, so certain the world made sense. She wasn't that girl anymore. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Jake Reeves, I need to talk to you." Rachel stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "No." A moment later, another text, "Please, I need to explain." "There's nothing to explain. You tried to destroy me to save yourself." "I was wrong, I'm sorry." Rachel's hands shook as she typed her reply. "Your sorry doesn't bring those men back. Lose my number." She blocked the contact and finished her beer. Reeves didn't get to apologize and feel better. He didn't get closure. He got to live with what he'd done, the same way she would live with surviving when others didn't. The next morning, Rachel packed her car and prepared to drive to Georgia, to Moody Air Force Base and the next chapter of her life. Her mother stood on the porch, trying not to cry. "You'll visit." "Every chance I get, Mom." "And you'll be careful." Rachel smiled. "I always am." "I'm proud of you, honey. Your father would be so proud." Rachel hugged her mother, breathing in her familiar scent of vanilla and coffee. "I know, Mom, I know." She drove south through the winter landscape, the radio playing classic rock, her mind already shifting to the future. There would be new squadrons to join, new missions to fly, new challenges to face. The past 4 months had tried to break her, but instead they'd forged her into something stronger. She was still Captain Rachel Hawk Morgan. She was still an A-10 pilot, and she was still standing. That would have to be enough. Moody Air Force Base sat in the flat pine woods of southern Georgia, home to the 23rd Fighter Group and some of the finest close air support pilots in the world. Rachel arrived on a cold February morning, driving through the main gate with her orders and a mix of anxiety and determination. The squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Vasquez, was waiting in her office. She was in her mid-40s, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent 20 years flying combat missions. "Captain Morgan, welcome to the 23rd. Vasquez shook her hand firmly. "I've read your file, all of it. The original accusations, the investigation, and the truth. I want you to know that in my squadron you'll be judged on what you do, not on what some SEAL commander said about you." "Thank you, ma'am. That's all I'm asking for." Vasquez smiled. "Good, because we don't have time for politics here. We deploy to the Middle East in 6 weeks, and I need every pilot sharp and ready. You're going to fly your ass off getting up to speed." Over the next month, Rachel did exactly that. She flew training missions every day, relearning the rhythms of squadron life. Some of the pilots were wary at first, unsure what to make of the woman who'd been at the center of a national scandal. But respect in fighter squadrons was earned in the air, and Rachel earned hers quickly. She was rusty at first, her timing off, her communication clumsy. But the skills were still there, buried under months of enforced inactivity. By the end of the 2nd week, she was flying as well as she ever had. Better, maybe. She'd learned things in that Afghan village that no training could teach. How quickly things could go wrong, how thin the line was between success and disaster, how much trust mattered when people's lives were on the line. The other pilots noticed. Lieutenant Jason Webb, a hotshot 26-year-old who'd been skeptical of Rachel initially, admitted over beers one night that he'd never seen anyone fly a close air support profile so smoothly. "You make it look easy, Captain," he said. Rachel shook her head. "It's not easy. That's why you practice until it becomes automatic. When things go bad, you don't have time to think, you just react." Is that what happened in Afghanistan? That mission everyone talks about? Rachel took a long drink. Yeah, everything went wrong at once. The mission was compromised, the SEALs were ambushed, my radios cut out. I just did what I was trained to do and hoped it would be enough. It was enough, you saved those guys. Not all of them, Rachel said quietly. The squadron deployed in late March, flying to Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar. From there, they would support ongoing operations in Iraq and Syria, hunting ISIS remnants and providing overwatch for ground forces. Rachel's first combat mission came on a hot April morning. The target was an ISIS compound in eastern Syria. Intelligence indicated 15 to 20 fighters using it as a staging area. A joint task force of Army Rangers and Kurdish fighters would assault the compound, and Rachel's A-10 would provide close air support. As she flew toward the target, memories of that day in Afghanistan flooded back. The feel of the stick in her hand, the weight of the ammunition load, the knowledge that people were depending on her. But this time was different. This time, the intelligence was solid, the mission planning was thorough, and the ground force commander was a seasoned Ranger captain who treated her like any other pilot. Hawkeye 1 Sabre 6, we are 5 minutes from objective. Expect contact on arrival. Copy Sabre 6, Hawkeye 1 is standing by. The assault went like clockwork. The Rangers hit the compound fast and hard. When ISIS fighters tried to retreat to a secondary position, Rachel rolled in and destroyed it with a single Maverick missile. When enemy reinforcements approached from the north, she made a gun run that sent them fleeing into the desert. 20 minutes after it started, it was over. No friendly casualties. 18 enemy fighters killed. The compound cleared and ready for exploitation. Hawkeye 1 Sabre 6, outstanding work, thanks for keeping us safe. Rachel felt something loosen in her chest. Relief, vindication, proof that she could still do this, that the last 4 months hadn't broken something essential inside her. She flew back to Al-Udeid and landed as the sun was setting, painting the desert orange and gold. As she climbed out of the cockpit, her crew chief gave her a thumbs up. How'd it feel, Captain? Rachel pulled off her helmet and smiled. It felt like coming home. Over the next 3 months, Rachel flew 27 combat missions. Each one was different, but they all shared the same core truth. Lives depended on her doing her job perfectly. And she did, every time, without hesitation or error. Word spread among the ground forces. The female A-10 pilot was someone you wanted overhead. She was calm under pressure. Her aim was perfect. She never panicked, never failed to respond, never put friendly forces at risk. The Rangers requested her by name. So did the Special Forces teams. Even the SEALs, different teams than Reeves had commanded, but SEALs nonetheless, began asking for her when they needed close air support. In June, Rachel got a call from William Chen. He was back in the States, but he'd been following her career. I wanted you to know that Colonel Wade was sentenced yesterday, he said. 20 years in military prison, dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all pay and benefits. Good, Rachel said. Commander Reeves pleaded guilty to filing false reports and negligence. He's being dishonorably discharged and will serve 3 years. It's not enough, but it's something. It's more than I expected. Chen was quiet for a moment. David would have been proud of you, Captain. You honored his memory by not giving up, by fighting for the truth. I had help. I couldn't have done it without you. We helped each other. That's what people who care about justice do. After the call ended, Rachel sat on her bunk in the quarters she shared with 3 other pilots. Through the thin walls, she could hear Webb and the others arguing about sports. Normal sounds, normal life. She'd been so angry for so long, angry at Reeves for lying, angry at the system for believing him, angry at herself for not being able to save all 3 of those SEALs. But the anger was fading, replaced by something else. Not peace exactly, but acceptance. She couldn't change what had happened. She could only control what came next. And what came next was 30 more years of flying, of proving herself over and over, of being so undeniably excellent that no one could ever question whether she belonged in the cockpit. Rachel's deployment ended in August. The squadron returned to Georgia, and Lieutenant Colonel Vasquez called her into the office. I'm putting you in for a distinguished flying cross, Vasquez said, for your actions in Afghanistan. The initial recommendation was buried during the investigation, but I'm resubmitting it with updated documentation. Ma'am, I was just doing my job. You saved 5 men under conditions that would have overwhelmed most pilots. That's not just doing your job, that's exceptional performance in combat. Take the recognition, Captain. You earned it. The medal ceremony was held in September, back at Nelly's Air Force Base, where the investigation had taken place. Rachel stood at attention while a general she'd never met read the citation and pinned the medal to her uniform. The audience included her mother, William Chen, Lieutenant Sarah Park, Sergeant Martinez, and Petty Officer Harris, the SEAL who'd survived that day in Afghanistan. Afterward, Harris approached her, still limping slightly from his injuries. "Captain Morgan, I never got to thank you properly," he said. "You kept us alive that day. Every single one of us who made it out owes you our lives." Rachel shook his hand. "I'm glad you made it, Petty Officer. I'm sorry about the others." "So am I, but it wasn't your fault. It was never your fault." Harris glanced at Chen, who stood nearby. "David talked about you that night, said you were going to prove all the doubters wrong. He was right." "I hope so," Rachel said. "You already have." That night, Rachel and her mother had dinner at a quiet restaurant near the base. Her mother kept looking at the medal on Rachel's uniform, her eyes bright with tears she refused to shed. "Your father would have been so proud," she said for the 10th time. "I know, Mom." "No, I don't think you do. He always said you were going to do something important, something that mattered, and look at you now, a decorated combat pilot, a hero." Rachel set down her fork. "Mom, I'm not a hero, I'm just stubborn. I refused to quit when it would have been easier, that's all." Her mother reached across the table and took her hand. "That's exactly what makes you a hero, sweetheart. Heroes are just regular people who refuse to quit when things get hard." Rachel squeezed her mother's hand and didn't argue. Let her mother have this. Let her believe that the world was just and that good people were rewarded and that everything worked out in the end. Rachel knew better. She knew that 3 men were still dead. She knew that countless other women in uniform faced the same doubts and discrimination she had, often without vindication. She knew that the military was still an imperfect institution run by imperfect people. But she also knew she wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot. 2 weeks later, Rachel returned to Moody and found a letter waiting for her. It was from a young woman named Emily Rodriguez, the daughter of one of the SEALs who had died. "Dear Captain Morgan," the letter began. "My name is Emily and I'm 17 years old. My dad was Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez. He died in Afghanistan the day you were flying overhead. I wanted you to know that I don't blame you for what happened. Mr. Chen explained everything to us. How my dad died because of bad people making bad decisions. How you did everything you could to save him. How you almost died trying. I also wanted to tell you that before my dad deployed, he talked about you. He said there was a woman pilot on the base, and some of the guys gave her a hard time, but my dad said she was good. Really good. He said she flew like she had something to prove. I'm applying to the Air Force Academy next year. I want to be a pilot like you. I want to prove that girls can do anything boys can do. And I wanted to thank you for showing me that it's possible, even when everyone says it isn't. My dad would have wanted me to tell you that he was grateful you were there that day. He knew you did your best. That's all anyone can do. Sincerely, Emily Rodriguez." Rachel read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in her desk drawer where she kept important things. Her father's dog tags, her pilot wings from flight school, a photo of her first solo flight. She sat at her desk and wrote a reply. "Dear Emily, thank you for your letter. Your father was a brave man, and I'm honored that he trusted me to watch over his team that day. I'm sorry I couldn't bring him home. If you decide to become a pilot, the road will be hard. People will doubt you. They'll say you're not strong enough or tough enough or good enough. Some of them will say it to your face. Others will say it behind your back. And sometimes you'll start to believe them. When that happens, remember your father. Remember that he believed in you. Remember that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. The sky doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. It only cares if you're a good pilot. Be a good pilot. Be better than good. Be so good that no one can deny you belong there. And if you ever make it to flight school, look me up. I'll teach you everything I know. Respectfully, Captain Rachel Morgan." Rachel sealed the letter and walked it to the base post office herself. Then she went to the flight line, where her A-10 waited in the twilight, its gray paint weathered and scarred from months of combat. She climbed into the cockpit and sat in the familiar seat. She didn't start the engines. She just sat there, hands on the stick and throttle, looking out at the runway stretching into the distance. This was where she belonged, not in conference rooms arguing with colonels who didn't believe in her, not in courtrooms defending her honor. Here, in the cockpit of an aircraft built for war, ready to protect people who needed protecting. The SEALs had declared her lost. They'd written her off, dismissed her, tried to bury her under lies and accusations. But she'd come back, scarred but unbroken, wounded but still flying. She'd returned with the sky on fire behind her, and she wasn't done yet. Not even close. Rachel Morgan touched the control panel gently, a gesture that was almost a prayer. Then she climbed out of the cockpit, locked up her aircraft, and walked across the tarmac toward home. Tomorrow she would fly again, and the day after that, and every day after that until she couldn't fly anymore. Because that's what pilots did, they kept flying. And nobody was going to take that away from her again.